because the subject I've chosen for today is creativity and courage, and I couldn't remember which way around I had it, so hence I had to look down. Thank you, Louise. It would work either way, I think, because as humans, we often face problems. I don't think anybody goes through life unchallenged. So we need to be creative. We have to think outside the box. There was once a poster for the Unitarians, one of those wayside pulpits with a ginger cat sitting in a box. I remember it with fondness. Cats like boxes, but cats can also think outside the box, I'm sure. And it's not only our creativity which is called for in life. Often those solutions we finally come to are not that easily to be managed. And what do we need if you have to go down a difficult path? Courage. Yes, we do. And yes, we haven't always got it. Does having a faith, a belief system, a gods in our life make a difference? What are these links between creativity and courage, besides the fact that they start with the same letter? These are areas I would like to explore with you in our time together. The middle of February, but at the beginning of February, we had actually something which speaks about creativity in faith, because between the 1st and the 2nd of February, we had St. Brigit's Day. Supposedly the 1st of February, we had Imbolc, the pagan festival of the first showings of spring. 1st or 2nd of February, and we also had Candlemas, 2nd of February. Now, Imbolc is definitely a pagan festival. Candlemas is definitely a Christian festival predominantly celebrated within the Catholic Church. I've always known about Candlemas, not, as my husband told me, it's James Joyce's birthday. I just beat you to this, but it was also the birthday of my grandmother. My grandmother was actually a good Lutheran Protestant. She would be proud of being mentioned as such, but nevertheless, she liked it that there was also a feast day on her birthday. She also liked the fact that there are a lot of little German ditties about Candlemas celebrating the increased day lengths. You gain an hour. And me, who probably is sort of a secret SAD sufferer, always is very glad when Candlemas comes round. I don't like long, dark nights. We have the overlapping of paganism and Christianity with Imbolc, the pagan festival of the first showings of spring, and Candlemas and St. Brigit's Day.
Not to mention the overlapping this year of Lent and Ramadan.
Yeah, I'll come to that later. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, fine.
I'm sorry. You don't have to keep quiet, but I mean, that is actually something I would like.
Right, but I actually can see it.
Yeah, amen. I'm sure, but so, and with St. Brigit itself, it's also interesting that St. Brigit was named after a pagan goddess. There was a goddess Brigit before there was St. Brigit. And she herself had converted to Christianity, but her father was a chieftain, a minor king in Ireland in the Dark Ages. There's actually very little we know about St. Brigit, minus the fact, I think what is by now historically proven is that she founded a cohabiting monastery at Kildare. All the other things have been written down, and there has lots been written down about St. Brigid about 200 years after her death. We definitely don't know that her birthday was on the 1st of February. That was a creative act of the Christian Church to put it there. But that does not make St. Brigid unusual, because a lot of people in those times did neither know their actual birthday nor even their actual birth year. What has been written down about 200 years after her death was by a monk which had the wonderful name of Cogitosus, which I think sounds either something out of a Harry Potter novel or as a disease. It comes obviously from cogito, the Latin for I think. So St. Brigid, as well as the goddess Brigid, were the goddess of creativity, of womanhood, of several miracles, and both are reported to transform water. No, not into wine. We are in Ireland. They didn't have wine there. Beer! So St. Brigid is still, the goddess, not the goddess, the saint associated with the beer growers. She's also affiliated to the blacksmiths and the dairy workers. The dairy workers, I can see the connotation with Imbolc, because originally Imbolc was the date of the first lactating of the ewes getting ready to lamb. If you don't have a ewe ready, think. When the snowdrops come up, it's Imbolc too, because we don't always have access to pregnant ewes. It is also nice to look at some of the legends associated with Brigid, not only because my name is a derivative of it, how she acquired, for instance, the land for the monastery of Kildare was she got into negotiation with the King of Leinster, another chieftain, and said, I want land and I want to build a monastery. We assume that the King of Leinster, and at those days, was still a pagan. Well, he wasn't particularly sort of giving it to her, just like that, because a woman says, I want to build a monastery here. Mm-hmm. So she said, okay, then only give me as much as my cloak can cover. And then everybody pulled on her cloak. I would like to know what that material was. And it got larger and larger and larger till she had not only enough for a monastery, but also for arable fields round the monastery and for pasture for cattle and sheep. Very creative, and it also, even if it's not the most believable of all stories, shows us how people use creativity in faith. Faith is not something which you get dictated from high above. And then it is like written in tablets of stone. I don't want to have a dig at the 10 Commandments. They're a very good basis for people living together, if you believe in a God or not. But faith evolves. Faith evolves with our imagination, with our creativity. And the saint who is the patron saint of poets as well is a good example for that. Because to a certain degree, and that is the God I believe in, God is the one we create to make us, hopefully, better people, to make us also capable of getting on with other people in a better way. There are also two St. Bridget's. There is one St. Bridget's cross and a Brigit cross. And this should be made from rushes. It's drinking straws. Somebody made it for me, which I thought was nice. And people attached it in pagan times. And even nowadays, that one is still used and now classed as a St. Bridget's cross to their houses and their barns to keep them safe from nature's forces, from illness, just whatever you wanted protection from. And then in Christian times, it evolved into that, and I can't let it go round. It is actually the Celtic symbol of the Trinity entwined with a heart. Now, when I was much younger, and also, classed myself as a non-believer, I thought, yeah, clever of those Christians, hijack everything. And I actually held it almost against Christianity, where they placed Christmas, where they placed Easter, because it is placement. By now, I look at this layer cake and think it is a wonderful symbol. Yeah, sorry. It's a wonderful symbol for creativity in faith. I know John Paul II called Unitarianism a pick-a-mix religion. I'm extremely proud of my pick-a-mix religion. And you can nourish yourself spiritually with so many different sources if you keep your horizon wide. So what I would like to present to you is a Imbolc blessing by Reverend Mark Hutchinson. May the ashes of all your fire replenish. May the snowdrops inspire your presence. May the soil sense the poetry that we all are. May the fire hold and heal our community. May we walk our paths with the knowledge of light. May we open, willing, and forever unafraid. So this came from one of the latest issues of the Inquirer. The next one is a prayer attributed to St. Brigit. Again, she hasn't written it herself, but we have prayers of St. Francis. We have the hymn of St. Francis, which probably St. Francis had nothing to do with. It is in the spirit of St. Brigit. You brought light to the darkness. You brought hope to the downcast. May the mantle of your peace cover those who are troubled and anxious, and may peace be firmly rooted in our hearts and our world. Amen. So you see blessings, prayers, which have centuries between them, and in themselves are not that different. Because Imbolc is the first showing of the lactation in the ewes, St. Brigid's Day and St. Brigid is also associated with the dairy workers, and in Imbolc festival, actually milk is a favorite drink. Oh, yeah. So next time you have a glass of milk, think of St. Brigid or Brigit, whichever one you want to think of, which I think is sometimes just a nice thing. It gives you connectivity. It ties you to the seasons. It puts you in a greater circle of life, in the circle of the year. One of my most favorite hymns. And what absolutely does it for me is that hold us in your steady mercy. I just love it. I must have an eternal desire to be helped. And I don't even know what steady mercy should look like, but it does it. It just does it for me. And when I interrupted Tom a bit, when he wanted to point out it is now Ramadan and it is now Lent, and there is a blackboard with chalk markings on it. What do you want to give up for Lent? Or what do you give up for Lent? I should have looked more careful at the wording because it makes a slight difference. So, again, Lent as an expression of creativity. I don't know so much about Ramadan. Ramadan is creativity in when you break the fast. I absolutely have to say it. And I haven't met that many Muslims who lost weight in Ramadan, because the breaking of the fast is accompanied by a lot of dishes, which have been very skillfully cooked throughout the day without tasting. My husband and myself, we both pride ourselves that we are more than just decent cooks. And but we taste, we perpetually taste. Is it too salty? Is it too hot? Do I need more taste? Do I need a different note in the dish? And all the rest of it. This blind sailing through, and it still turns out all right up to now. I mean, we haven't inflicted the products of the blind sailing on other people than ourselves.
We've done the Ramadan fast with a Muslim colleague several times, and it amazes me how we can cook such tasting. I get it.
And it's a lot of family getting together in Ramadan, and everybody brings the dish they are especially good at. And because you didn't have all food, you have capacities, and you eat it, and you also think ahead there will be another fast next day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I am not the one who particularly copes well with an overloaded stomach, but I did enjoy the iftars we have shared with our Muslim friends. And in the town of Mannheim, in the Federal Republic of Germany, there is a huge Muslim community, all sorts of Muslims, including the liberal Ahmadiyas, with which the Unitarians in the UK have very favorable links. And they have now a Ramadan carnival. So you go and you have little booths and things where the kids can be entertained with, and then you sit down, and it is especially meant as a sit down together for Muslim and non-Muslims in the section of the town. So again, they use the fasting as a creative impulse to strengthen their community over and above the barriers of something which can be established by faith.
We've already spoken here this morning about how many of us have coffee cravings in the morning. Now, it's not universally understood, but Muslims refrain from drinking, even drinking water, as well as refraining from food during Ramadan. And when Ramadan falls in the middle of high summer, you could have over 12 hours without drinking water. And many of my Muslim colleagues going at the end before they left that water, water, water. I remember going coffee, coffee, coffee.
Yes, I remember a solidarity fast. We only did days of fast. Where it was actually in summer, but it was such a dreary, dismal day. And there was also my brain saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice? A cup of coffee now. Just a cup of coffee and maybe a biscuit. I don't want any more. Just, I mean, to cheer you up a bit. And obviously, on a solidarity fast, you deny yourself that. I don't know how much I go otherwise with self-denial, but I go with the fact that we have wishes and needs, and we all have to learn throughout our lives, and sometimes this part of learning is painful, that they can't be fulfilled and satisfied straight away. If Lent or Ramadan helps us to learn that lesson and then open up to the outside again, that is actually a good thing. Also, I have cracked that joke many a times, and at one point I definitely have probably to lay it to rest. In Lent, you give up spiritual things, immaterial things as well. And I always said you can still continue eating chocolate in Lent, give up a few prejudices. And I don't know if you have to measure, I mean, chocolate you are allowed against how many prejudices you can leave behind. And sometimes it just also takes courage to think outside the box what you can do with something which is prescribed. Ramadan is prescribed, Lent is prescribed. Just because it is prescribed, it does not automatically mean, oh, I don't do it. Somebody from high above tells me to do it. So dig your heels in. My dad was an atheist. There's nothing wrong. I mean, my dad was an upstanding man and I have fond memories of him. I also had a very complicated relationship with him. And that was not to the fact that I'm a person of faith. But my dad, my atheist dad, on Good Friday insisted on eating schnitzel. And not the vegetarian variety. I mean, just because it was prescribed from above, I'm not having it. Hairdos if it makes you happy. But I think there are deeper and more long-term solutions to the problems how to have a happy life.
Well, I'd forgive your dad that, but he had enough of his life described for him by that little man with the funny moustache.
Yes, that's true. And my dad, for when everything is said and done, my dad was sent to the Russian front and was the only one of his group of friends who actually returned. The other ones got killed or died of diseases there. He actually returned with minor frostbite to his fingers and always had problems with cold hands all his life. And he, more importantly, returned with a trauma, which he probably had never fully worked through. He never built a new circle of friends. I mean, he got married to my mum way after the war and things, and he liked the family he had married into, but as building deep friendships with other people, he had never dared to do it. For that, the experiences of the war have definitely knocked out the courage of him. And I feel sorry for that.
I mean, I can't speak about your dad without mentioning that he got his Persil Shine, his denazification certificate, your personal washing fighter, in record time. Because the American army entered the town of Heidelberg before the Nazis could destroy the records, and they found his army disciplinary record. And he was twice denied the washing for insufficient enthusiasm for the Nazi cause.
Ah, yeah.
And he wrote quite critical letters home. And we always wondered how he got them past censorship.
So figured out he was
We have figured it out. He was a censor. So, and most of the letters, we have them somewhere in our house, but they're not readable any longer because there was a kind of inky pencil, but it has deteriorated. There are some which are typed, and when I read through them, I only found them actually after I looked into his worldly belongings after his death. Then one made me absolutely cry because the long Russian winters and shortly before the end of the war there is, will I ever see another spring? And he saw many springs. He made 97. So he had a lot of time being given after the war. But some of his courage went out with him into this war and did not return. So this is my own prayer for courage. Dear God, give me courage to live this day, not just to survive it, to go on even when my directions are not clear, to see the majesty in a large mountain, not the impossibility for me to climb it. Do not let me feel like an overworked and overloaded pack animal, but let me realize that I have the tools to tackle my burdens one by one. And most importantly, let me see, feel, and experience that in an unkind world, I am nevertheless surrounded by many acts of kindness and love. And this is 2 for the price of 1. This is a prayer in my own translation by a German theologist called Elmer Gruber. Have no fear. Look at the flowers, how they grow, the buds which open up, blossom and then wilt. They flower only for a short time and come back again and again, new and different. If God takes such good care of the flowers, how much greater will be his care for you, even if you don't believe in it and cannot feel it. Therefore, don't be afraid. Dear God, you make the flowers bloom. Let me feel that you are always there with your care, which even if it surpasses my understanding. Amen.
I have another example of courage here, perhaps a different kind of courage. Reverend David Usher is a Unitarian minister, originally from Australia, but who worked and ministered in England for many years and is now based in America. This is his reflection. When all the trouble erupted in Minneapolis, he got up and went to join in the Unitarians who were protesting. This is what he writes. We marched, we sang, we chanted. I was in the front line of those witnessing, 5 feet from the line. 100 clergy knelt in unison and started to pray silently. I wanted to take photos, but the moment I took off my heavy mittens, my fingers froze. After several minutes, the police moved in to start the arrests, starting at one end of the line. To their credit, they were gentle and respectful at all times. It took at least an hour before the last person at the other end of the line was arrested, having knelt silently in prayer all that time in the freezing cold. The dignity, grace, and calm of those being arrested was overwhelming. As each person was taken away, we onlookers applauded, sang, and cheered, or wept. I alternated between cheers and tears. I went back to First Universalist for a Vespers service, led by the church's faith leaders and musicians. The church was packed. At the start of the service, we were given permission to do whatever we needed to do for our own self-care. There was some singing of simple songs, some beautiful words of prayer and protest, but after the first 15 minutes, while the rest of the congregation continued singing, standing, being active, all I could do was sit with my eyes closed and weep. I wept silently and steadily for 45 minutes. Tears of anger, of sadness, but mainly tears of intense appreciation for the resilience of those wonderful people of Minneapolis and for the tireless love and care they are shown for their neighbours in the face of this regime's violent tyranny. In particular, I have been incredibly impressed by the Unitarian Universalists in Minneapolis and St. Paul. There are 3 large congregations in the Twin Cities, plus numerous others large and small in the suburbs and nearby towns, and they are extraordinary. Each day they are living out the very best of UU values, and their tireless activism is not only being motivated by political outrage, it is being fed and sustained by a deep spiritual grounding in their faith values. The worship services and vigils I attended were not times of anger, but of profound depth, of reaching into the heart and spirit to touch what is sustaining and emboldening and life-affirming. As a lifelong Unitarian, there are times when my tradition annoys the heck out of me, but I have never been so proud and grateful for it as I was this past week. I am extremely grateful that the privileges of my life enabled me to answer the call to Minneapolis, but so much more am I grateful for the inspirational courage and leadership of the people of Minnesota. They are in the front lines of the federal government's attempt to subjugate the nation into silence, and they are absolutely refusing to be intimidated. Alex Pretty was murdered, and instead of cowering at home, even more people went out into the streets to protest and protect their neighbours. There is no longer any fence to sit on. To be silent and inactive, to leave the work to others because you can't be bothered or it might be risky, is to take the side of Trump's despotism. Every act of protest, of organising, of caring for your neighbour is important. If you have ever wondered what you would have done in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the answer is whatever you are doing or not doing now. Reverend David Usher, well said, that man.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing that with us. And I think it is the last few lines which absolutely did it for me. Because I'm of that generation, my birth year is 1956. So we have always asked our parents, our grandparents, what did you do during the Third Reich? That was an important question. And the fact that it was not often answered, and probably I would actually take my family out of it. I'm pretty clear where my family stood, but often this question wasn't answered truthfully. But I'm not wanting now sit in judgment about the people who couldn't answer it. The enormity of what they had to live through probably didn't make it easier or made it almost impossible for them to go back and look at it in a very rational, almost uninvolved way. But it is not what these people have done or not done. People are always told that we don't learn from history. We do actually learn from history. We do. Do we learn enough? This is the thing where I have my doubts. And this is in a political sense, and I don't mean that in a party political way, but in a sense being concerned about our community, our world, our planet. We have to learn more. And then not stand there and say, I've learned it now. You don't learn it and put it away safely in a drawer. You learn it and you put it into action. And you also, however atrocious things might have been, you can develop courage out of what you can leave behind. Also typical for my generation, is a whole series of books by an American anthropologist called Carlos Castaneda. And it's not even true if he hasn't invented the whole thing. The first book was called The Teaching of Don Juan. And Don Juan is a Yaqui, a Native American medicine man. And Don Juan takes this Carlos under his wings like an apprentice. And even if they were invented, and I would not want to read the whole books, the whole series again, but there's some good stuff in it. And in the first book, one thing I remember very vividly is that Don Juan takes Carlos up a mountain. I mean, it's not rope climbing, but it's difficult territory. It's falling rocks. And it's nighttime. And I've taken peyote beforehand as a sacred drug. But they're not that intoxicated that they don't know reality. Anyway, but they don't see very much of the reality around them. And then dawn rises and they are at the summit. And the first thing Carlos does is look down and think, dearie me, I got up there. Now, I'm no mountain climber. I've been up Kinder Scout and that's sort of me done with my sort of exploits in that field. I also have 2 arthritic knees. I mean, but I do see that as a metaphor. Very often we have complicated situations, multifaceted problems to face. We work through them and we reach some kind of summit. May it be a complete or partial solution or something of that ilk. And we stand there and we look and think, dearie me, did I get up there? And we do get up there. And for heaven's sake, and this is probably justifying to use that expletive, be proud of yourself. Looking back can do something for your courage. And don't think what I thought when I read it, yeah. And the poor geezer had to get down somehow. And now he even saw it. Yes, I mean, there's always something where you can destroy a really good metaphor. But if you have reached a certain point, be good to yourself. acknowledge your progress, because in acknowledging your progress, you create something like an idea how you can apply that same modus operandi or a similar modus operandi to another situation, because just because you solved one complicated situation, it does not mean that you will never ever have another complicated situation arising. So in that aspect, looking back can actually be beneficial. And sometimes it can also be beneficial to say certain things have to be left in the past. Get yourself something which an Anglican friend of mine once called her God box. Put some of the problems which you can't face now in it and say, I will return to that when I'm good and ready. And you will find when you are good and ready. I'm sure you will. And I brought another little visual aid with me for you to have a look at. And that also brings me back to, give something up for Lent. Give something up for Lent, in my case, should actually mean don't jump to hasty conclusion. And because I sometimes think counting to 10 doesn't work, maybe I should sort of add a 0 to that. Will it then work? I hope so. Because a few months ago, I joined an arts and crafts group. And on the afternoon session, we were creating dioramas, I call them, i.e. sort of little things in boxes which tell a bit about ourselves. This is not my diorama, that is by somebody called Alan, and that to the present day can't decipher his surname. He has signed it on the back. And I will return it to him as well. But this Alan, at one point, and probably just wanting to wind me up, was sort of going Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. The man did not know what hit him. Because I said, only the fascists used the first verse. Germany, Germany above everything. It comes from the 19th century, and it was actually appealing to the pan-Germanic diaspora. It was not meant Germany, Germany above everything, and the other ones go to the wall. Hoffmann from Fallersleben, who wrote the text to the German national anthem, with his first verse, had actually not intended to sort of say global ruling of the world by the Germans. That much is true, but it is used by the fascists now. And the official hymn of the German Federal Republic is Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit, unity, justice and freedom. The third verse. Don't ask me what the second verse is. I might have a sudden memory lapse. Also, as Germans don't sing the national anthem that often. If you have US American kids, I'm sure you could just sort of put them somewhere and they can sing it. They sing it often. Even British kids probably would be a bit better. French kids definitely would be. When I had been working in a school and we had exchange kids from France, the German kids said, they can always sing the Marseillaise. Can we do the German national anthem? that was the first time they actually thought they had something lacking with them. But joking apart, when it is used nowadays with the first verse, it's the fascists. I'm immensely worried about the fascists in this country and in the country of my birth. So I took the man to the cleaners. The man just let me, then looked at me and said, okay. I didn't want to offend you. And then we got talking. And then I saw what he had constructed over a couple of weeks in this diorama, which is all about welcoming refugees. So he is not no fascist, and he wears a Palestinian scarf, not as a fashion accessory. He's also worked in Vienna with some committee to atone for the atrocities of the Shoah or the Holocaust, whichever word you prefer. So I'm singing from the same hymn sheet, if you allow me the cliche. I apologized. There wasn't anything else. And I said, I just overreacted. In a world where I see such a vice on the right, that's probably explicable, but still wasn't nice of me. And then he said, would you like the diorama for your church? And I said, yes, I probably would. But the Doncaster Church has that much in repair works, old buildings. Louise will know what old buildings means. So, it wouldn't be particularly appropriate to leave it there being stored. But I said, I'm also doing a bit of roadshow, i.e. go around the diaspora. Can I take it with me? So I let it go round, and the world flag, makes attempts to escape. So I put it, unfortunately, after I explained it, the stripes is sunset, midday, sundown, night, and it is also the globe, which I think is wonderful. And in the front, there's a lot of jigsaw pieces. The jigsaw pieces have names on the back, or professions, and it is commemorating all the people who drown in the Mediterranean, trying to make it to safety. So may you pass it round. Tom obviously knows it. So you can play around, and as I say, before I return it, I will fix the world flag back up again. But then, the world is in such turmoil.
Maybe that's a metaphor.
Maybe that is a metaphor that we haven't reached it yet.
It's a metaphor that we need some stronger sticky tape.
Yes, it was actually the glue which gave in on that one. And I just temporarily fixed it with sellotape.
On the back there, was like,
Let's hope not.
yeah.
Like it goes.
Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah.
So this is was a lesson for me, and probably for all of us. We have perceived ideas where our friends and our enemies are. And sometimes and sometimes we're just not right. And isn't it actually nice when somebody whom we have judged wrongly turns out much better? It's not nice that also the opposite happens, but that is one of the facts of life. We don't get everything right. And courage to change is never to change everything. So I would like to finish with a Serenity Prayer. I'm a 12-stepper, so I should know it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. And God sent the wisdom quickly. We need it. I would like to finish with a reading from Voices from the Margin, which is Unitarian Universalist, and the reading is by Monica Cummings. Bless the stranger with a smile. Take time each day to remember that you are a part of the interconnected web of life. Bless a stranger with a smile. Tell the people in your life how much they mean to you, and take a moment every day, beginning today, to give thanks for all that you have. May you have the strength, courage, and commitment to begin or continue the rewarding journey of self-understanding. May you have the wisdom to forgive yourselves, the grace to ask for forgiveness, and the compassion to forgive others. You are the co-creator of your life. It is up to you. Forgive your trespasses as you forgive those who trespass against you. May you live your beliefs and feel at one with everyone and everything. Blessings upon you, blessings upon me, blessings upon every living thing. Blessed be.